Hello, my name is Dr. Ali Emre Karadeniz. I'm a plastic surgeon exclusively practicing hair transplant surgery for the last 15 years. And today I'm going to talk about eyebrow transplants. So let's begin by asking, what is an eyebrow transplant? An eyebrow transplant is taking hairs from other parts of the body, including the scalp or other body hairs, and placing them in the brow region, of course, whenever there's a lack of hair density at the brows. Who can benefit from an eyebrow transplant? There is a significant amount of people in the community that actually suffer from lack of density at the eyebrow region. Of course, most of these patients are female patients because they have these plucking habits, which eventually cause the decrease of density at the eyebrows. I would say that around 50% of females above the age of 30 complain of some type of or some degree of eyebrow loss, right, or lack of eyebrow density. And also there are male patients with this problem as well. Any patient with eyebrow loss or lack of eyebrow density could benefit from an eyebrow transplant provided that they don't have some special conditions preventing the success of eyebrow transplant. These conditions may include systemic disorders like illnesses related to the patient's general health like heart, kidney, liver, or dermatologic diseases that may deem a surgical procedure unsuccessful, or psychological factors like an addiction to keep plucking the hairs like trichotillomania. Of course, most of these problems, if they are treated prior to an eyebrow transplant, these could also benefit from this treatment. Now, what is special about an eyebrow transplant? Although eyebrow transplants are a form of hair transplantation, they have some distinct characteristics that make it special. The first and most important is that while the donor source for hair transplants is scalp hair itself, so we are using similar hair for similar hair, in eyebrow transplants we are taking a different type of hair, most of the time hairs taken from the scalp. And this creates some special, let's say, characteristics for eyebrow transplants. To summarize those, scalp hair may have different color, hair caliber, growth speed compared to the native eyebrows. The other thing is that scalp hairs mostly exist in multi-haired units, whereas eyebrow hairs are mostly single. So tissue needs to be modified after they're moved in order to match more the eyebrows. The other thing is that eyebrows are more flat on the skin compared to scalp hairs. So it's technically challenging to actually surgically create that incredibly acute angle that may be close to 0 degrees. Another thing is that hair direction may be somehow mixed in scalp hair, but as you see in eyebrows, they are much more parallel to each other. Another thing is that the curvature of scalp hairs is not so critical, while it's very important that the eyebrow hairs tend to grow towards the skin surface rather than away from it. So all these things make eyebrow transplants much more technically challenging and requires experts in the field that are especially experienced in doing eyebrow transplants. Simply put, just choosing any hair transplant clinic may not be enough to get high quality eyebrow transplants. Now, where should one go for having an eyebrow transplant? Obviously, we're looking for experts in the field, and I can easily say that there are only a handful of surgeons in the world that are experienced in getting top-class results in eyebrow transplants. Obviously, as I said before, is to not just choose any hair transplant clinic. You'd frequently see when you search for eyebrow transplants, when you search online, you would see a tiny page or a paragraph dedicated to eyebrow transplants by hair transplant clinics. And this shows that there is very little experience in doing eyebrow transplants by most hair transplant clinics. We as AEK have a dedicated website just for giving information about eyebrow transplants because this is one of, let's say, the treatments we are especially experienced and interested in performing. Now lastly, how we perform eyebrow transplants at AEK Hair Clinic. As I mentioned before, the special characteristics of eyebrow transplants that make it technically challenging, it's very important to try to match these hairs from the scalp as closely as possible so they resemble a natural eyebrow. This requires obeying technical details in every part of the procedure. The first thing I would say is it's important to be able to get long hair grafts in eyebrow transplants as opposed to shaven hair grafts. Now, some of you may be aware in traditional hair transplants, shaven hair grafts are used. So when they are transplanted, you don't actually see a long hair shaft. You just see a buried graft as a scab at the top. And this prevents controlling the angle, direction, and curvature of the hair because you can't see it. So I think it's very important to use, although it's more technically challenging, to use a long-haired graft technique so we can actually transplant the grafts with the long hair shaft on it, and this will enable us to control all those details I mentioned much better. So this is how we do eyebrow transplants. And the AEK hair transplant team is very experienced in providing high-quality eyebrow transplants. I hope this overview regarding eyebrow transplants has been helpful.